Welcome to the most interesting session of the 3 days of the RNI days. Actually, that's... Sorry? Yeah. And actually, it is the second most interesting. The most interesting is another one, the one on the soil health, which will take place this afternoon. So my name is Marc Duponcel. I work in DG Agri. We have a unit there which deals with research and innovation, and we are very interested in innovation in rural areas. So thank you for joining. I don't know whether there is some streaming, but thank you also for maybe those that follow us from a distance. What is the objective of the session today is to open a conversation on Horizon Europe and the opportunities that we can develop with RNI in rural areas, and how research and innovation can contribute to this. Here we will discuss those issues with the 4 panelists. I will ask you to join the panel, maybe. So we have one panelist from who will be a little bit late. This is a session which is here for your views, contributions, the points, the perspectives, the ideas that you have for the strategic programming of Horizon Europe. We have put online in June an open consultation on the strategic orientations, and if you look at the part of cluster 6 of the strategic orientations, you have some interesting material to read, and the main expected impacts that you want to do, the main activities that we want to implement under Horizon Europe, and this consultation is open until the 4th of October. So please, if you have not done so far, have a look at the consultation and make your say. There are closed questions, but also open questions. Bring your views, and today also, through your comments and also Slido that Alexa will present a little bit afterwards. So, but first, before we start, we will talk about rural areas, smart, vibrant, and circular rural areas for about one hour. I think it would be interesting that we know who is in the room, who we are. And I would like to ask you, who among you comes from rural areas? Who is a rural dweller?
Wow.
Two. We have 2, 3, 4, maybe. So yeah. So those that live in urban areas, cities, big majority. Yeah? And maybe some that are not quite sure whether they are in urban or rural area, because sometimes the difference is not that easy to spot. Okay. So, and why are you here? Are you here because you are a rural scientist, a scientist working on rural issues, not a scientist that lives in rural areas? Scientist? 2? I thought that there would be more, huh? 3, 4, 5. So, are you coming from public authority, public organization? Yeah, a few more. NGOs. So we see that there is a quite, and also the private sector. Farmers. Is there one farmer here, or SMEs, business? Yeah, a couple of okay, thank you. So there is a nice variety of expertise in the room here. So before we ask you to discuss our plan, we'll shortly introduce them to you. That's Alexia, who will make a short presentation on that.
Can you hear me? Should I unmute this? Technicians? Or you know what? So a warm welcome to Francesca Whitlock, who's just arrived from a meeting at 9:30 somewhere else. So well done, thanks. And the clicker. I miss one hand. Okay, so first, one of my jobs is to introduce you to Slido. So we are going to try to use Slido today a bit to get some of your questions. Mark will take some directly from the floor as well, but if you want to input some comments or ideas that you want to share while the speakers are pitching, please feel free. This is through the event app, so if you have not downloaded the app, you can, I think, just ask your questions directly or share your ideas directly. If you have downloaded the app, Slido is in there directly, so don't go to Slido, go to your app, and there you need to select policy conference sessions, and then we are in room Mendel, and then you can post your comments in there. Doris at the back is here to moderate the Slido conversation. She will ensure that your questions come up. And for those of you who are not familiar yet with Slido, you can vote and like the questions or comments or ideas shared by others so that they come up, and then we will take these ideas that have come up. Okay? Okay, so what are our ideas for the future? So as Mark said, we're here to discuss our plans for Horizon Europe for rural communities. And you have this document online, and I'm not going to rehearse this. I just have 3 minutes to give you a very light flavor of what is in there, to get then your perspectives as panelists and your perspectives as audience on what we have foreseen so far. So thanks to research and innovation in Horizon Europe, what we want to do is 6 things. Okay, we want to reduce emissions and adapt ecosystems, production systems, and communities in general to climate change. We want to halt biodiversity decline and restore our ecosystems. We want to enhance the sustainable and circular management of natural resources, together with value creation for the well-being of our people, so not for the sake of it. We want to develop production systems that are based on sustainability and inclusiveness, so the social dimension is quite important as well for us now under this new program. And we want to improve our understanding of the drivers of behavioral, socio-economic and demographic changes, what comes ahead, and how to anticipate and prepare for the future. And finally, we want to try to establish governance models that enable sustainability with all that goes with it. So that's what we want to achieve. Then our plan for rural communities in this agenda, which is our bigger, what I just mentioned, is our bigger set of impacts for the whole of Cluster 6, so the part of Horizon Europe that will address food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and the environment. We want to develop the solutions and knowledge that is needed for rural areas to fully take their part in this sustainability and climate and social agenda. That's what we would like to do. And to do that the way we think things at the moment, but that's where we would like to hear you, is to do it in a way that opens opportunities for them, for rural people, rural communities, and that gives them a future and a role that sometimes they feel that they miss at the moment. And we would like to do that through 2 ways. One is really research, creating knowledge, knowledge to improve our understanding of the changes, of the drivers, of the business and governance models that we need, and also research to develop the technologies that we still don't have to solve the problems that we have. So that's a bit the top-down part of the agenda. And also, we would like to invest quite a lot in innovation, which would be very interactive, very bottom-up, very partenarial, with people to empower them, so people and also businesses, to develop their own solutions to the problems that they see. So something that would be very place-based, localizing the implementation of sustainable development goals, and really empowering people to develop their own solutions. And for that, we will need to keep working on knowledge and innovation ecosystems that provide the enabling environment for them to do this. So that's what we have put in our plans for the moment. That's what we have in our head. Now, what do you think?
Thanks, Alexia. So how are we going to discuss today? Yeah, there is nice fact sheet. We will discuss R&I in rural areas according to four main perspectives. We will first talk about the links between rural development and the digital. It will be Enrique Nieto who will give us a few words on that. We will also discuss about the opportunities which are opened by the circular economy, or the bioeconomy, the circular economy, new value chains, and what impact they can have on the economic development of rural areas. There will be Shane who will give very crispy points on that. We will look also at the role that social innovation can play to boost innovation in rural areas. Innovation is not just technical, new technologies and so on. It's very much also how people work together. Social innovation, organizational innovation, and so on. Elisa will give us her very important knowledge on that. And then, of course, the innovation is something that is implemented, that is gets owned by rural dwellers, that is being made their own by people living in rural areas. So we'll see also as the last point in today how we can engage rural communities in the process so that the innovation actually takes place. And Francesca will give us a few words on that. So first, again, we will have short talks by the four panelists. They will speak for maximum 6 minutes each. And after the round of talks, we will have a round of discussion. So your contribution is really expected today, now, through Slido or just by raising your hand, but also, as I was saying before, looking at the documents online and bringing your own ideas. It's at strategic programming level, so it's quite global at the moment, but you can enter free takes, send your contributions. Everything will be interesting. So first, let's start with rural and digital. Enrique, okay, you are a senior expert in the European Association for Information on Local Development, and you will provide us insights from the ENRD Smart Village thematic group. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the organizers for the invitation. I would speak from my personal views based on the experience that we had in coordinating this thematic group at the European Network for Rural Development on smart villages, but as well the discussion that we are having within the context of a new Horizon 2020 project that will explore the social and economic impact of digitization in rural areas, called DESIRA. But before I start with my presentation, I just want to take a step back so we have a look together on what has been the evolution of digital transformation in the last century. So where we started including some machines in our industrial processes towards a system that we call now in the industry 4.0, when there is a much closer interconnection between the digital world, meaning data and information, with the physical world related to machines, sensors, etc. researchers like to name things, so they call these cyber-physical systems, which could be even transposed in a specific example in the agricultural sector. Let's just look at farm management system. At the moment, these systems are a system based on other individual systems related to weather data applications, to farm performance, seed database, seed optimization, irrigation, field sensors, etc. My message here is like, the digital transformation process are resulting into very complex systems that sometimes are very difficult to understand. And we need to understand the interconnections between all these different elements. The Desira research project, what is bringing into this system is another layer of complication, and is actually providing the argument that this system do not work in isolation from people. So we will explore how is the relation between the social, cyber, physical systems. So how all these technological systems affect as well social interaction and the social cohorts in rural areas. So very complex systems. What we have learned during the past 2 years is that in developing and in the process of digital transformation, people need to be at the center of it. You cannot develop all these systems without having the people engaging and be able to put them at the center of this transformation, because they would be the final users of all the developments that will be produced. What is another lesson? There are many technologies available already. So that's the importance as well of having people at the center of it, because these need to be developed and applied in a rural context and adapted to the specificities of that rural context. So how do we use 5G in the specific rural context? Robotics, 3D printers, simulations, big data, Internet of Things. It's a combination between all these technologies with the needs on the ground. So our last lesson, it's about you need to do this digital transformation processes with people. Otherwise, this digital transformation process cannot be a process just to install technology on the ground. Technology has to be seen as a tool to address the needs of the local people. So it's the means to an end and not the end in itself. So what it would be my views on where research could add in this field is basically exploring the boundaries of these drivers of rural change of the future. The OECD has identified some in the last rural innovation conference that they did in Scotland. So I think that research can add a lot on how these different technologies could be applied and add value locally in rural areas. Again, and it was also outlined by Alexia, we need to understand better the process on how we can engage people and rural communities in this process of digital transformation and be able to design tools that enable them to understand these processes and to design and deliver this digital transformation locally. I think another important area are related to the opportunities that digital transformation are bringing to rural areas. Therefore, we need to see rural areas as well as being able to take advantage of the benefits that this digital transformation. So exploring what are these new business models that can retain the value that can be created through digital transformation is key. And try to avoid that rural areas become just end users of technologies, while these are provided by urban centers, so the benefits are captured there. And my last point would be about what Alexia mentioned about the rural innovation ecosystems. This is a picture from the GRC that outlines that there are support systems for agriculture innovation, but that there is some gap in relation to the wider rural innovation and research. So my question to all of you would be how, and where research can play a big role in the future, is how these rural innovation systems can look like, testing these systems. So is there a space for an agriculture and rural knowledge innovation systems? So that would be my question to you. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Enrique. We indeed have a ACIS which functions at the moment, which is also at the core of the work that we do on agricultural research and also the common agricultural policy. We would have to see how, and if it is feasible, how you could widen it to embrace also rural development issues. Now, we'll go to our second presentation. That will be Shane Ward from the National University of Ireland in Dublin, who will talk about rural areas in the circular economy and whether innovation can open new opportunities for rural communities. And you will provide us, some insights from your experience also already with the EIP focus group in which you were part on food waste, and also you were coordinator of a project that we finance, AgroCycles. When it's your turn, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I will speak to you about AgroCycle, which is a Horizon 2020 project. But before I start, just to put things in context, since is that too loud? Sounds very loud here. Since I was born, the population of the world has tripled, and by the middle of the century, it will have gone up fourfold. In parallel, the demand for the use of resources per capita has at least doubled and is increasing. So the challenge is to feed 4 times more people to a higher standard than post-World War II. That's a huge challenge. The problem is limited land resources, impacts on the environment, and so forth. The other dimension, just to mention, if you go back to the 19th century, in effect, food production and consumption was local. That's not 100% true, but it was pretty well local because the population was 1 billion, 1.5 billion. The population of China, that's the population of the world at that time. So you can see the challenges that we face. So in terms of the food production nowadays, you cannot think locally. You have to think globally. From a circular economy perspective, you have to think globally, not locally. So that's the background. AgroCycle, Horizon 2020 project led by our group at University College Dublin, Ireland, 26 partners from across Europe as well as China and Hong Kong. The objective to look at the application of the circular economy across the agri-food industry. This summarizes the whole system. It is made up of individual sectors, as it were, but you cannot treat them in isolation. It is all part of one whole body, as it were. It sort of acts organically. If you address one issue, it will have implications for the others. So if we look from a farm perspective, the issue with farming is that you need to produce food more efficiently with lower impact on the environment in order to meet this huge demand that's growing as we speak. In that regard, from a rural perspective, the future is that farming becomes more and more efficient, and we've heard about the digital economy. Precision agriculture technology has a very big role to play in that regard. But let me also say that the role of precision agriculture today is completely exaggerated. In effect, precision agriculture has failed to deliver. That might be a controversial statement, but I think that's true. One issue here that you need to consider when looking at the circular economy is the concept of the Jevon's paradox. I don't know if any of you heard of that before. Jevons was an engineer in the UK, in England, back in the 19th century. And essentially what he's saying is this. If, for example, you take food waste, and if the consumer knows that there's an outlet for that food waste, such as, for example, anaerobic digestion and whatever else you can extract from it, what the consumer will do is the pressure, the psychological pressure on the consumer will be reduced, and the consumer will not be too concerned about food waste. So in fact, food waste could increase, not decrease. So you need to be very, very careful about having outlets that appear to be good solutions when in effect you can shoot yourself in the foot. I don't think that's appreciated, and there are a lot of these very simple solutions being advocated which in reality would kickstart a Jevon's effect. So that's a hugely important issue. In terms of food production locally, again you will hear a lot about grow local, eat local. What I say to you is, do not think locally. You can think about local niche markets, because remember, from a global perspective now, the challenge is not local, the challenge is global, to feed the 10 billion who require a higher standard. If you want to do that, bottom line is, you've got to produce food more efficiently. Therefore, you have to have food grown in areas of the world that are more efficient. For example, there is no point in growing, let's say, corn or maize, depending on whether you're American or European. In Ireland, you will not grow it. You can grow some, but it's not very efficient. So I would say, do not grow maize locally in Ireland. However, grow grass in Ireland, absolutely, because we're very efficient at that. So it depends on climate, soils, etc. Here's the problem. If you have people deciding, I'm going to be self-sufficient locally, they will not use the land as efficiently as they should. And the consequences are that that will impact, if you expand that to a global scale where everybody is producing locally, then you have a real issue. What I say, however, is consumer is king. And the real issue here is the link between farmers and the retailer and the consumer. And the consumer dictates what's needed. And therefore, the real solution to this, dare I say it, is not so much technical as in our minds. That's you and me, everybody. We've got to change our outlook on this. And that's not a technical solution, it's an educational one, etc., etc. It's a lifestyle. We have to, unfortunately, suffer a bit of pain. I know that's very controversial, but we've got to look at ourselves and see where we're going in that regard. So in regards to the overall solution, let me just point, one other point is that there's a lot of talk about a bioeconomy, building it on top of the agri-food industry. What I say, there's a Jevon's effect associated with the bioeconomy. And the only type of waste product that should go into a bioeconomy based on the agri-food industry is unavoidable waste, or to put it another way, waste that in effect is a byproduct of the agri-food industry. I could speak forever on this. Those are just my few controversial points, and I'd welcome any questions at a later stage. Thank you.
Many thanks, Shane. I just retained that you need to be connected between the global and the local, and that also the different parts of the supply chains, different actors needs to be very well connected. Now we go to the third perspective, the third dimension that we want to talk about today. That's the social dimension of rural development, and here Elisa will tell us how can innovation help rural communities to become more sustainable. Elisa works for the URAC, the Research Institute for Regional Development in Italy, and you will give us some insights from your experience with URAC and also your experience with a project that has been financed by Horizon 2020 on social innovation in rural areas, which is CIMRA.
Thank you. The European Commission take a lot of effort to help rural community lagging behind to address their social problems. Nevertheless, according to Eurostat data for 2015, 25% of the rural population is at risk of poverty or social exclusion. 4% is reported unmet need for healthcare, and 12% of the rural population tend to leave education early. So this is not common to all rural areas of Europe, of course, but the most marginalized where the service, the market and the state struggle to provide basic services, struggle to become vibrant, innovative, and inclusive places. It is here where social innovation can play an important role in improving the social and economic aspects of rural development and addressing disadvantages and social exclusion. So before giving you an examples, I'll tell you what is social innovation. So social innovation is a process of reconfiguration of social practices, institutional arrangement, in response to unmet social need and societal challenges, which seek to enhance outcome on societal well-being, necessarily including the civil society actors. This is an important element. Is a process of social change that is driven by a collective action. Within the Horizon 2020 SIMBRA project, we have collected more than 300 examples of social innovation in marginalized rural areas, and we have analyzed in deep how social innovation emerged, developed, and the impact. And here I tell you the story of a social innovation examples in Italy. Learning, Growing, Living with Women Farmers is a social cooperative offering childcare services on the farm in rural areas across the South Tyrolean region in Italy. It was created in 2007 by the initiative of a woman willing to create professional and economic opportunities for women farmers. It also responded to the collective need to provide childcare services on the farm for parents willing to raise their children in contact with the nature. So the person who initiated the initiative was the former spokesperson for South Tyrolean women farmers, very well rooted in the community with international connection, and herself a farm woman with 5 children. So to develop the initiative, she involved members of her network to take part of the project and to share knowledge and experience. And to implement the idea, they submitted the project to the European Social Fund, and they got funded. So when the initiator proposed the project to the women farmers, they were not very supportive because they didn't know they didn't think this project would make any change to the social and economic condition. So the founder decided to organize the training course and invited women farmers to take part to the course on childcare providers, and she had to literally convince them to take part to the course, and she extended the initiative to other women in the rural areas. So after the training course, the women started their activities on the farm, and the farm became not only a place in which to provide the service, but a place for rural education, for social interaction, and especially a place in which to transmit cultural values and local knowledge. That was very important. So after 10 years of activities, now the cooperative employs more than 100 women who provide childcare services to more than 500 children across the region, supporting the public service. So, of course, the political activities of this founder was crucial to secure political support. And after 10 years, the initiative actually has social included women, empowering them, offer opportunities for business diversification, and led an important social change. It changed the way society perceived women in rural areas. So if I need to think about how research and innovation should further promote this initiative, here are my 4 key messages. First, I think that rural and innovation projects and activities should further enhance social capital in rural area on the ground. Social innovation arises because there are strong leadership skills and strong willing to cooperate. So enhancing social capital means providing local community the capacity to take strategic decisions and to be engaged in addressing societal challenges. Second, I think that rural and innovation should design processes that engage rural people within the decision-making processes, embedding local understanding in policy design and give power to the local people to design interventions that are tailored to the local need will generate a great impact on the territory. Third, I think that rural and innovation outcome should better understand the market and the regulatory obstacles to social innovation development, as well as the supporting and the hindering policy. Because social innovation is mainly driven by good policy and open policy that support the initiative. Finally, I think that rural and innovation should be more effective in disseminating research funding to practitioners on the ground and in communicating the evidence of the research to policy level at different scales. Thank you.
Many thanks, Elisa. Now, well, actually, you started a little bit on the topic, the next topic regarding engaging rural people in the process of research and innovation. Now we will have Francesca, who will give us a talk also on how we can engage and empower rural citizens to take the lead in rural innovation. So, Francesca, you are with ECOLIS, the European Network for Community-Led Initiatives on Climate Change and Sustainability, and also part of the Global Eco-Village Network, GEN. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We want to know your secret. That's how the government of one of the wealthiest regions in Spain approached the Iberian Eco-Village Network a couple of years ago. And what secret was that? Now, the Navarran regional government, like so many regional governments, especially in southern Europe, had been waking up to the crisis of rural exodus, what this means for rural areas, the emptying of rural spaces, young people leaving agriculture, abandoned villages. Now, they'd studied the numbers, they'd studied the data, and they discovered something curious. And they discovered that there were certain areas, certain hotspots in the region that were bucking the trend of rural exodus. They realized that there were places where people weren't leaving. People weren't going to the big cities and the urban centers. People were coming. Babies were being born. The population was actually going up in these rural areas, not down. Social enterprises were being founded. They asked, what on earth is going on here? And they discovered that what was going on there is that those areas were where eco-villages and sustainable communities had been founded, in some cases for many, many years, for decades. And these quietly in the background, these community-led initiatives had been creating quiet revolutions in these rural areas. So they came to us. They came to the Iberian Eco-Village Network, which is part of the Global Eco-Village Network, where I work. And they said, what are you doing? How do you do this? We want to know, and we want to work with you to make it happen elsewhere. And that's how a fruitful partnership has evolved between the Navarran regional government and the Iberian Eco-Village to make a pilot project, part funded by the government, to replicate the eco-village model in elsewhere in rural areas, in abandoned villages, to recover population, to fix population, and to launch social enterprises and create communities in rural areas. Now, I'm telling you this because I think it's incredibly illustrative of the fact that all across Europe, there are existing community-led initiatives that are ready and willing partners for innovation and who are really embedded in local communities and can really make change happen, that big shifts are happening in local areas thanks to existing community-led initiatives. And this is particularly relevant in the case of social innovations. I was very happy to hear your thoughts on that. And I'm co-president of ECOLIS, and we represent thousands and thousands of citizens in all European countries, in hundreds of community-led initiatives that are making this change happen. And I think something very important to bear in mind when thinking about research and innovation, and particularly big projects, Horizon 2020, is that we often think that these local, small-scale initiatives, I feel this in my local area, aren't they just the proverbial drop in the ocean? Do they really matter, these small-scale initiatives, these local initiatives? But what we do at ECOLIS, in our network work, is that we do the research, we find the data on all these hundreds, if not thousands of initiatives, we do the sums, and we find that beyond the shadow of a doubt, if you put all these local initiatives together, they have a huge, huge impact on food systems, on carbon sequestration, but not only in terms of sustainability, but also in terms of local cohesion, helping solve those social problems in rural areas that we're faced with, helping fix population, also create green jobs, to really innovate. And so there are existing partners in rural areas that can act as catalysts for change. And what I really want to say is that research and innovation from the European level must engage those partners if they are to really connect with the people on the ground in rural areas. A complaint I often hear in my work is, what's going on up there? What's going on up there in the institutions? I don't know what this means. What are these projects? What's this bureaucracy? And it's initiatives like eco-villages, like community-supported agriculture, like transition towns, that provide these hubs of focus that can reach out to local people who maybe have no interest in what they think the European Union, the European Parliament is doing, but can build that bridge, can be the communicators and say, this is what's happening, this is how it can benefit you, this is how research and innovation can help you in your daily life. And I think that's so incredibly important in this very challenging rural context. I think many of us, I hope, know the context, but speaking from my personal experience, I live in rural Catalonia. And there is a very wise young girl that I think many of us are aware of, who keeps telling us these days, saying, our house is on fire. And this is not just rhetoric. In rural Catalonia, where I live, our house is on fire. The whole area has been burning all summer. Farmers who've been farming the land for years are losing their crops through forest fires. Their harvests are being decimated by drought. They are noticing the changes. Now, what the community-led initiatives in our area are doing is saying, we see you, we hear the challenges, and we want to be the bridge to the solutions that are available on the European level, to the research, the innovation that can help you in your daily lives. So I think my main messages are these. One, that community-led local initiatives are incredibly important partners for research and innovation and must be engaged to engage people on the ground. And the second thing also relates specifically to social innovation, I think, because when we think of research innovation, we often think it's synonymous with high tech, that these must be very technical solutions. And that is not always the case. Technical solutions are very important and very relevant, but we must also think of social innovation, of rebuilding communities, empowering local communities, making people feel pride, a sense of place, making young people want to stay and giving them the opportunities to stay, rebuild, revitalize their rural areas. Thank you.
Many thanks, Francesca. We have to see how we can boost that from with the Horizon Europe projects. How we can support the local projects with projects, Horizon Europe projects, which are multinational. I mean, maybe cascading grants and so on. So we had 4 very interesting talks about 4 dimensions that we consider are important to boost rural development. Now, I would like to ask the audience if you have specific comments, questions that you would like to address on those subjects. When you put your question, please tell us who you are, please. Thanks.
Hello? Yeah, thank you. Okay, hello. This is Isidro Lasso. I'm the Deputy Head of the Innovation Ecosystems in the ERTD. And being in Spain, I have been listening recently about the bottom-up movement in Spain, but also in Estonia and in other parts. It's called Startup Village. And I had known that in less than 3 months that the movement has started. 3 startups from Estonia are coming to a small village in southern Europe, in Spain, in Burgos. The first one is coming on the 1st of October. It's a startup from Estonia, a fintech using blockchain to a co-working space that has been created just for this startup, and 2 others in the area of edtech are coming there. 2 also from Barcelona are moving to this village. So this is showing that this is the startups movement, and is maybe also a solution to complement all the other aspects that has been mentioned here. So it's not only about digitalization, having wires everywhere and everything connected. There are no businesses taking advantage of that. It's useless. I mean, it's good for having access to the public services, health, etc., and maybe also for the people to buy through Amazon. But by buying through Amazon, what you are doing is decapitalizing the rural areas, and the money is going to where these companies are that are not precisely the rural areas. So this startups movement is taking a lot of momentum at this moment. How you see is not necessarily in the area of agriculture, although there is an aquaponic, very advanced, technologically speaking, company who is coming here. And we are talking about a village of 150 inhabitants. Imagine the capacity to absorb all these startups from all across the Europe that are coming there. No? How do you see this complementing the 4 dimensions that you have brought? I thought Steph was going to be talking about these things, about the smart villages, startup villages, but I saw he could not make it. So maybe some of you can make your comments on that.
Anyone on this one?
I precisely mentioned as one of the key points that we need, that research could explore as well in the future, is about these new business models that could be placed in rural areas in many different sectors. You mentioned one which is outside the agri-sector traditional type of approach for startups and modernization and businesses in rural areas. And exactly, we need to explore what you mentioned, that these companies and the capital of the rural areas and the benefit that these new companies bring to rural areas remain in rural areas. And that rural areas are not just the end users of technology that someone from a city sells and put in rural areas. So talking about the decapitalization of rural areas. I'm not saying that big enterprises can play a role as well in linking up more in rural areas, but I think we need to explore all these new business models in terms of co-working spaces, hubs, new startups in different sectors, not only agriculture, but wider to that, in the energy sector, mobility sector, health, education. There is a huge potential here, and I think rural areas have actually the capacity and the competitive advantage to offer quite some resources to these companies to move to rural area. Now they have, this capacity needs to be mobilized and sold to these rural areas. Then another important point as well is what you are mentioning. While having this process, you need as well to engage the population of the area, because you are mentioning like Estonian company moving to a rural area, that will create as well some sort of impact in the rural area. So you need to understand as well this connection of the whole system at the village level. So I think you are absolutely right in that respect.
Yeah, if I can add something, I think that for this initiative to be successful, not only is necessary to develop, to build the capacity within the community and to share the knowledge and to make sure that there is a collaborative attitude, and so the capacity of the people to work together, that has to be further developed, of course, because social capital is not given. You need to work on trust, on collaboration, on network. So besides these aspects, I think that another important element is to ensure that those initiatives has the approval of the local administration, and that the local actors, meaning the municipality mayors or the provincial representatives, are involved into these processes, because these will actually further secure that in the future the initiative could maybe growing up or be scaled out. So I think that both having the people, the citizens involved, and the rural actors working on the initiative directly engage, it's important, but also the support of the local administrator, it's relevant to have this initiative be scaled.
We will take more. Yes, one question.
Good morning. Frank O'Mara is my name. I work in Teagasc. It's the Agriculture and Food Research Organisation in Ireland. And look, I'd like to thank all the panel for your very, very good talks. And I think rural areas need all the innovation and the good ideas, whether they're high-tech or whether they're bottom-up approaches that we can find, because rural areas are in real trouble. And agriculture is, you know, the linchpin really and the foundation of most rural areas. And it is struggling in most parts of Europe. And we see, you know, despite all the improvements in the quality of food and all the, I suppose, interest that consumers have in food and in knowing about it and all that, still the price of food tends to drop. And I remember 2007 or whenever we had the food riots, people said we'd reached an inflection point in the price of food and that it would no longer continue this long downward trend. But that proved to be false. And, you know, just this year, the price of most commodities that farmers get are down 10 to 20% across the EU. So given that backdrop, I suppose that's why I say we need all the kind of solutions and innovations that we can find. But my question really is directed to my colleague Shane, and in relation to the bioeconomy and opportunities that there might be outside of food production. And you made a comment that really, unless something is a waste, there isn't an opportunity for it, or we shouldn't be expecting to find opportunity except for things that are real waste. And given that when agriculture is working well, there is very little waste because everything is recycled. Are you saying that there are not much opportunities for bio-based industries developing other than the food industry?
We will continue to take the questions in a row. I mean, there are still a couple at the back.
Yes. As we really have to be on time, if your statements or your can be concise, that would be.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's more like a comment than a question.
Who are you?
Yeah, my name is Julie Jørgensen, and I'm EU advisor at Central Denmark EU office.
Mm-hmm.
My comment is on just to add on the discussion is particularly on the social and engaging part is that the European Capitals of Culture initiative have shown that engaging in rural areas has a huge impact. For example, from my region, I know there is a project called Rethink the Village, and it has been given. It has, for example, have a project where you give money, a small amount of money, to people where they have to make like a new way of decision process on what are we going to use this money on, and it's just an example of how you can also engage people. And I know, for example, Galway 2020. Who's going to be European Capital of Culture next year. They are really working on how can we engage rural communities into this cultural project. Sorry.
Okay.
And one last.
I think we have one more, and then giving the floor to Doris for the Slido part.
My name is Kjell Ivarsson, representing the farmers in Europe, and I agree with my Irish colleague that we have to develop the production on land, in water, in the forest land, and make it more profitable, because that's the basis for everything else in the countryside. Otherwise, we will get lost, I think. So profitable production as a basis to agree.
Thank you. Slido, maybe? Yeah. Doris, what do we have?
Yes. Thanks for your contributions to Slido. I think we can group the questions a little bit, and there are one group of questions which makes a direct link to Horizon Europe programming and to the programming of other European programs. So I think some questions go in the direction, how do we manage, considering that this topic of rural development is quite horizontal, link between clusters, how do we achieve it? And a second bunch of questions you can group, and I think it was a little bit stimulated through the presentation on social innovation, how do we manage to interlink the different programs and funds? So we find it to some extent for the EIP, Agri, for instance, already, the link between Horizon and other funds. But can we also achieve that for instance, social funds?
And I see there's a question for Elisa as well.
Yeah. So, Elisa, you want to...
We had a last one over there, no?
Okay. But shall we answer also to Doris' question? How do we want to organize?
Maybe you reply to,
where
to
is
both
it,
of
my
them.
questions? Was it about impact, right? How do we measure the impact? Was it that one? Yeah. Good question, actually. Within the Horizon 2020 Simbra project, we have actually developed an evaluation framework which actually aims to evaluate the impact of social innovation on the 4 domains, which is economy, society, and the governance. And the evaluation framework is made up by a series of structured and semi-structured questions that can actually be delivered to the European Commission in order to evaluate their policies. So a way to evaluate the impacts of the project is to deliver the instruments to the EU who will evaluate the effectiveness of the policy at the policy level. So how the project has actually, how the money that the European Union has spent has actually been effectively produced impact at the societal and economic level. And measuring the impact means also see how the condition has changed. If I think about the examples that I brought, I mean, it's quite clear which was the social and economic impact of the initiative after 10 years. So woman was employed, the way people perceived the woman has changed, so it has like an impact on the social value, and actually the initiative had created job. So I think that through evaluation frameworks and through the instruments that we are developing within the project, we are able to evaluate the impact of the social innovation projects. So this is my reply to the question online.
Thank you, Elisa. To reply to the question at the bottom, which just disappeared, I mean, how to link different funds. I mean, there is the experience that we have had with the EIP, the European Innovation Partnership, in agriculture, where we have tried to link Horizon 2020 with what we do in the CAP on innovation with bottom-up projects and a lot of networking. The question is back. Maybe, Shane, you could reply to the questions on the bioeconomy?
Yeah, specifically what I was speaking about is building a bioeconomy on the agri-food industry. What you have to look at is you cannot treat before the farm gate separate from after the farm gate. 1/3 of food losses occur after the farm gate. Before the farm gate, one would say agricultural production is efficient. It's not as efficient as it should be because, for example, technologies like precision agriculture have a great potential to enhance it. But the actual application of precision agriculture technology and field-scale crop production across Europe is appallingly bad. And so, in effect, while food losses, or losses, be it pre-farm gate or post-farm gate, they occur, they are massive. And what I'm saying is, if you build a bioeconomy on top of that, look what you're doing. You are basically removing the incentive. The Jevon's effect comes back into action. You're removing the incentive for farmers to be more efficient, for the consumer to reduce food losses. If you look at food loss on the farm, food loss on the farm can be tangible. There's a real issue with contracts between retailers and farmers. If, for example, you don't meet a particular standard, the farmer may have to plough it back in. That's a waste. But you must remember, of course, the consumer is king. The consumer dictates what the supermarkets want, and hence there's a domino effect. So it's a full chain. There's no getting away from that. Secondly, opportunity cost, as the economists talk about it, opportunity foregone is as big a loss as tangible losses. So if precision agriculture is not working properly to its ability, and it's not just precision agriculture, it's agricultural production systems that need to operate as efficiently as possible so that you minimize loss. So a quasi-perfectly operating system would have minimal loss. And once you have a system that has got minimal loss, it makes sense to build a bioeconomy on top of that. But be very, very careful of the Jevon's effect. Shinna will.
Thank you for your answer. Then we take one last question. Just very quickly.
Very quickly. Just Arturo Villar here running a European Commission network related to startup cities for Tier 2 cities. So we are, it's an open question also for maybe next meeting next year, a co-creation opportunity between rural and urban opportunities about skills, innovations, and also related to this question about the startup village. So only to give you a good inputs, I think these Tier 2 cities are ready to collaborate more with rural opportunities. Youth people, I think, is an amazing opportunity for co-create more between rural and urban. So again, it's more an open question for our next meeting next year. Okay.
Okay. Just each of you one keyword.
The digitization of vertical farming. Watch this, particularly for urban food supply, not animals, but for vegetables and so on. That's an up-and-coming area because of the new digital technology, digital revolution that's occurring. And it will put pressure on farming systems. So it's a very interesting dynamic. 20-year horizon, 20 to 30-year horizon. That's all.
Elisa, would you have a final word? What we should bring back?
Yes, I think that rural and innovation programs should take seriously the condition of the woman, the young farmers, and the vulnerable groups such as migrants, and make rural areas having the same opportunities as urban area. I think this is my message.
And yours, Enrique?
My message would be that digitization explores and gives and provides many benefits beyond the agricultural sector for rural areas, and that these benefits need to be captured by and exploited by the local people and not by stakeholders coming from outside. So we need to provide them the capacity to make use of all these opportunities available.
Thank you. And Francesca, you will conclude.
Yeah. Two brief things. One, that as I mentioned, small-scale community-led initiatives are hugely important bridge builders in terms of implementing and spreading research innovation. And also just hearing these words about farming and agriculture and efficiency and productivity and profit, yes, but so important to also be thinking about rural community resilience and resilient farming, biodiversity, thinking beyond monocultures, thinking beyond productivity, and thinking about how communities are going to be truly resilient in the face of climate crisis.
Thank you very much. I see that there were quite a few questions also on the Slido, so now we have to close the discussion, to stop here, to prepare for the next session. But keep writing, keep looking at the open consultation to bring your ideas, send free text. You can also meet us at the cabin in the village. There is the cluster 6 cabin there. You can discuss also with commission staff. So this is the beginning of a discussion also with us. So don't hesitate to send your messages. That will be important for strategic programming, but even beyond that. Thanks a lot for joining in a quite a nice number of attendance. Thank you.